It's just ubiquitous in everything. Now with video games, everything is coming out as a remake, a reboot, a re-release, a remastering. Um, there's different levels of it. Some of them are simple graphics upgrades. I think like one that I can think of is obviously a big one like Final Fantasy VII. But not only did they go ahead and decide to make it a completely, everyone was clamoring for a Final Fantasy VII reboot. I obviously have memories of the original game. I need to have my gamer card taken away because I've played almost all the way through Final Fantasy VII twice, never actually beat it. And I started to play the newer one a couple of years ago. I know the second part just came out, and that's another thing. But I get it. They're taking the original story and they're kind of reimagining it. But I didn't really get hooked by it because I'm like, again, Final Fantasy VII and those characters are of a specific ilk in my mind. This is that story that tells it. I can't imagine those characters experiencing something else than what they went through. I think it's cool how they expanded on it. So now you kind of find out what some of the other characters. I don't know if you played it, Travis. Did you play Final Fantasy
I
VII?
played the first one, but I don't think
Right.
or the first
So
part of.
I kind of like how you get a side story of Yuffie, right?
Mhm.
Like you get to see what she did when she went off and left Avalanche, or you get to see more 3D realized versions of the world. Granted, when that first one came out in the mid 90s, we were blown away by these hand-drawn rendered backgrounds. That was amazing graphics. And you had the little brightly colored polygon like tank control walking around the area. Now I think it's almost too overwhelming because they're trying to make what was, I'm babbling here, but they were trying to take a small detailed scene and now reimagine it as an entire city.
Right.
And I think the charm came from what it was when it first started out, and the fact that they're making it over 3 full-length games over 7, 8, 9 years. That's a lot.
That's too much. It's like,
Yeah.
just take the original game, update all the graphics, the visuals, do some extra, maybe add some extra stuff. But like they're turning this thing into, it's like a movie that's being turned into a 3-season, Netflix. It's just weird how they do that.
It's
And
almost like the trend, like a decade ago, where every movie that was a trilogy, the third movie had to be 2 movies because they wanted to squeeze a little bit extra out of it.
That's what I was just saying.
Lord of the-
Money.
I'll tell you what, I just recently played the Fantasy Star remakes, as you know. You sent those over to me. And I feel like that the first Fantasy Star remake, the remake of Fantasy Star 1 was what a remake should be, because it was close to the first one. Like if you played the first one, you knew where to go and what to do, but it was different enough that, with stories and added dialogue and things like that, that it became a unique experience. And I thought that was great. Final Fantasy, it's like you said, there's just way too much stuff going on. It's just they're trying to fit too. It's like they're turning it into a Yakuza game or something. It's just too much.
Michael's in.
Yeah.
Did you guys play the Resident Evil remakes?
I haven't. No.
Don't think I played any of the remakes. I'm not a huge Resident Evil guy.
Okay.
Even though that's kind of your fault, Travis, for the very first one came out, you fucking turning up the volume on your speakers when the dogs jump through the window.
Through the window?
And we're hanging out in his room. He says, you gotta check out this new kind of game. Like, this is like the first survival horror game, right?
Right.
And so I'm in the mansion, I'm walking down a hallway, and this motherfucker is in the background turning up the volume in this quiet spot because he knows those dogs are about to leap through the window. And I nearly shit myself.
This one goes to 11.
Oh, geez.
Back when I had my 5.1 surround sound system set up.
Oh, that was high tech, man. That was...
Yeah.
But no, so I didn't play the Resident Evil. But now are they remasters or remakes?
No, they're remakes. So they actually remade Part 2. I think it was in 2019. And I think in 20 or 21, they remade Part 3. They just released a remake of Part 4. But they're pretty well done. The Resident Evil 2 remake was really good. Even though it had a lot of like they added things to it. It was still pretty good. Part 3 is another one of those cases where it was the kind of the opposite, where it wasn't as much stuff going on as the original Part 3, so they cut a lot of it out of it, and so it was more of the visuals. So a lot of people kind of were on the fence on that one. I still thought it was pretty good, but I thought those were good ways to do it. You know what I mean? I haven't played the 4th one yet. I never actually played the original Resident Evil 4, so I'm not very nostalgic. So if I played the new one, that would be my first experience at all with Resident Evil 4. But
so
that's the most popular one, right?
4, yeah.
Resident Evil 4, wasn't it?
so it was very kind of action oriented.
Yeah, that was like a big GameCube mover too. I think that was an exclusive.
But I think
for
those
the
are
GameCube for
the
a
way
while.
Capcom did those 2 Resident Evil games was pretty well done as far as a remake goes.
Yeah, that's not. And you mentioned Yakuza. You know, that's like probably right a notch or two below my love for Phantasy Star, and they've been remastering those, going back with their new engine, because they call it the Dragon engine. You know, ties into
It's
the
a
game.
remaster. It's not a remake.
It's a little bit of both. Like, obviously, Yakuza 0 was a prequel that was used in the engine, and then they remade 1 and 2 using that new Dragon engine, but they did give it quality of life improvements, because I never did play 1 and 2, the original ones, but it was a shock having played 0, 1, and 2, and then going to like 3, 4, and 5, and going back and playing the PS3 and PS4 versions, because you're so used to these new niceties and the changes in the flow and the graphic quality and the gameplay, that when you go back to the original version, you can kind of like, oh, okay, I can see why they changed these things. And like right now they're talking, there is going to be a remake of Yakuza 3, and I do think they deemed it a remake. So they're going to take the whole thing and just basically redo all the assets, and I'm sure upgrade the dialogue. They've added in characters at times. So, but you said one thing, yeah, that series is insanely long and insanely complex. But I will tell you something. I played 0 in 2017, and I'm like 80 hours in on the most recent one, and I'm like 54% complete. And that is a game that I don't want to go too far off topic, but that is a game that they have told a story since the beginning, and it's something Hollywood can't seem to do. Granted, none of this was scripted all the way to today's date, but we have watched this character go through like 20 plus years of his life, and life changes, and we've seen characters grow up and die and move on. And the depth to that is something that I think almost no other game rivals, because playing whatever, it's 9 right now technically, there's so much in there that is honestly moving and emotional, and like it feels like closure in some aspect, because I've seen this character over 8 years of my real life change and grow, and that's tough, because as you get older, when a game series takes 20 years to go from start to finish, you know, young kids now get in on a later game. You don't get that bonus of having been there from the start.
Right.
That's been difficult for me to think about with certain games, like the Resident Evil series, Travis. I know they're different stories, and even though I haven't played much, I know like Wesker features in a lot of them, and the Umbrella Corporation and all that. But playing them from the beginning, you get a little more attachment to the characters and surprises in the storyline. Oh, I remember that from the beginning, and now they're explaining it. And they're constantly rebooting and remaking everything, so you don't get that long-term storyline and enjoyment. So that was a little bit of a soapbox for me, but that's why I kind of like them continuing stories and making new things versus just beating something that was already there in the past into the ground.
Yeah.
And just for the sake of reselling it. You know, Nintendo shuts down all their online shops, and then, hey, just buy the game again for the Switch too. Just go ahead and get the remaster. Like, nobody's going out and making something new. It's, remember this game from 15, 20 years ago? Well, here it is with better graphics and a new menu system. And it's just not the same.
So I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Going all full circle now back to Final Fantasy. your love of Yakuza is infectious. By the way, I need to continue
and the cakes are readily available in bakeries throughout the 3 different cities. You don't got to go digging through obscure locations to find it.
So what I found interesting with Final Fantasy VII, this remake, reboot, whatever, cash grab, I always wondered, or didn't wonder. I didn't play the Final Fantasy series a whole lot after a certain point. And so I kind of lost interest. And that point was after Final Fantasy VII, the original. And I'm wondering if they saw the same thing. People lost interest. I don't like the newer ones. It's lost its story, it's lost its charm, or its gameplay. To me, I've heard that the new one has great story, but then they use all these new combat systems and all this other stuff, and it seems to me interesting that they picked Final Fantasy VII to go back to, which to me is the point where it really lost its way. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but for me, that's what I felt. Like Final Fantasy VII, I played the earlier ones.
Was Final Fantasy VIII the one where it was like the guy with the big sword? Not
That's
the
7,
ones where they
right?
made no, not 7, but after that when they looked more human.
Yes,
Yeah,
I believe so.
It was
Yeah,
more human. It was Cypher or Seifer who he had the shotgun with the sword on it.
Yeah. Right.
And then the characters were like human looking.
I didn't really like that one. And then they made 9, which they kind of made it back to the original cartoony one. I liked 9, and then like you said, then when 10 came out, like after that, when they just started making it more realistic, I lost interest in it too. I didn't like that style. I like that old kind of.
I liked the old style better. That's the thing. And they went to 3D. They went to this whole trying to make it all over. Like I've heard great things about 15, and I tried to play it, and I just couldn't get into it. It just.
Yeah, I have so many copies of 15 that I've either bought or I've gotten on like Game Pass or something.
15 copies of 15.
Like,
but Final Fantasy 14 is good.
The online, yes, but that's a whole different ball. That's a whole different ball of wax. But yeah, 15. I think I've passed the first cave like twice, and I always think I really should play that. That's kind of it's on my smaller bucket list of games to play, but I just never think about going to it. I'm with you guys. 10 was the last one I beat. And I've touched on playing the others, either in part or for a long time. Even the more recent 16 on the PlayStation 5, it's just not the same. And I think, here we go, we kind of always go around in a circle with this, but because the game plays more on the concept of Final Fantasy than the world of Final Fantasy. Here's the checklist. Okay, you have Phoenix Down in the game? Check. Do you have summons in the game? Are they named Ifrit, Shiva, all the other ones, right? Okay, now they're not always gods or demons or something else, but there's some character based around that. Is Sid in the game?
Is Sid in the game?
Yes. Is there at least an image of a chocobo you can ride or race? Yes. And so that makes a Final Fantasy game. Not really to me. It makes a role-playing game with common elements, but the story doesn't necessarily tie into anything else. Right. And again, that's why I'm so hooked on Yakuza, because from 0 to 9, including some of the side story games and even the spin-offs like the Judgment series, there are threads of characters commingling, things that have happened 3 games ago, which in real time would have probably been like 5 or 6 years between games. They've changed. You've seen the world go from like 1988 to 2023. And the technology changes and the design changes, but it's still the same cities, but you see how they have changed with the times too. And it's so hard to explain until somebody actually plays that game. That in some ways, I think it's superior to Grand Theft Auto in terms of the scope of the world. You know, Grand Theft Auto to me is like Skyrim, right? Never-ending game. It's like a sandbox. You can do a bunch of stuff. Yakuza has a bunch of stuff you can do, but you feel more like you're existing in a world than just playing around in a sandbox.
Right.
And I'm going to be sad when this one's over, because I think there's major changes in the series. There's a lot of reminiscing going on in different parts of the game, which again ties back to things that happened 7 games ago. and they give you the
wonder-
context of why you're reminiscing about it, but it's not the same as having experienced it.
You need to make like a Yakuza series.
What was that?
You need to make a Yakuza series.
Oh, I want
Froze.
to.
Can you
I
guys hear me?
absolutely want to. Yakuza in a cave?
Yeah, we hear you.
If that
I don't
makes
think
sense.
there's too many games out there where they followed the story as much as they have Yakuza. Like all the GTA games, yeah, they kind of base in
You
the
go
same
back to
world,
San
but
Andreas or some of the
but you're
similar
not like you
areas.
don't know what happened. You know, it's not like a continuing story. Same thing with
Yeah.
Final
Bethesda
Fantasy
games
wasn't.
and continuing stories. Yeah, Final Fantasy wasn't.
Yeah, Final Fantasy was a
self-contained.
or Fantasy Star, you mean?
No, Final Fantasy was not. Remember, none of the stories really connected.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think Yakuza is the
Well,
only
yeah.
one that's kind of done that.
Yeah, right. I'm agreeing.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, actually, in a way, yeah, it really is. Like that's a game I want to do videos on it in the future because I think it's really underrated. And like I said, I know Infinite Wealth right now is like one of the top selling games, but it's interesting to me because there is so much more to that game if you've played the past ones, even just like the last 2 or 3. There's so much in there that if you didn't experience what actually happened and you're just getting it, you know, secondhand accounts, third-party flashbacks, doesn't have the same oomph. So
I really
I've been
love
lucky
the
that I
description
discovered those.
you had